Welcome to our session, which is more politely known as Are we in deep work or are things a little bit problematic? But they're not, perhaps not as catchy as, using expletives. And what I will say, apart from my t-shirt, this is actually a Copilot free session. So I'm Loryan. I have a website. No, I've been working with Microsoft 365 since it was BPOS. So I think I'm up to about 15 years now. Live and breathe this stuff and work at Rapid Circle as a solution specialist in Australia.
And I'm Megan. I am an organisational change and learning consultant. So I've spent most of the last 12 years focused solely in Microsoft and a bit obsessed about the employee experience. So you might think, are we at a psychology conference? We're talking about work and focus instead of tech and Copilot. You're in the right place, but we just felt before diving into the technology and all the amazing sessions that are a part of this, we just thought we'd like to talk a bit broader. So we're going to talk a bit about deep work, what impacts it, discuss some of the research out there, and of course, circle into Microsoft 365. And then we'll finish with some thoughts on driving change and some possibilities from all the problems we're going to raise and complain about, I guess, during the session. So why are we talking about deep work? We're not breaking new ground here in this session. This is not a new idea. And there's been loads of discussion, novels, books, whatever, literature, research for quite a few years. The image on the far left, you may have heard of Deep Work by Cal Newport. You may have heard of Stolen Focus. These are just a handful of some of the books out there that have been gaining popularity and momentum in the dialogue over the last few years. You could say that attention has been getting a lot of attention. But we just wanted to go deeper into these topics to really think about the working world. Deep work is considered a state of peak concentration. It's a state that lets you learn hard things and also produce your best work, quality work. Some people may compare it to, say, your other term might be your flow state. The concept of deep work was actually coined by Cal Newport. He is a computer science professor in the US, and he has suggested that to be truly productive, we should log out of all communication tools for multiple hours in a day in order to sustain our focus. Now, I'm guessing most of us or all of us on this call, we're not writing novels. We're not in a cabin in the woods shutting the world out to produce our one single greatest achievement in life. We're maybe not doing research reports, but we do require time and focus to produce good outcomes. And it's important to consider with this, have we actually become more productive with modern technology? Surprisingly, there's actually little evidence to show this.
Now, something that you may or may not have heard of as a term is something called executive functioning. So a key to achieving and sustaining deep work are elements of executive functioning. So this will be ranging from self-monitoring, which provides the self-awareness of how we're focused or working, like, oh, that looks shiny, or maybe I shouldn't do that, as an example of self-monitoring, or keeping our impulses and emotions in check, like, I'm going to go see what's in the fridge. Maybe I shouldn't. I've just eaten lunch. I should just keep working. Or how we actually start work or sustain focus. Like, one of the dangers is, I might just check some messages before I dive into this. Or just holding thoughts in our brain with our working memory. Something that gets quite affected a lot by interruptions because we haven't actually gone through the process of storing that memory. So people like myself with ADHD, one of the things with ADHD is this thing about short-term memory loss, or that we don't actually have very good short-term memory. The reality is we actually have sufficient short-term memory. We're just so distractible that we don't actually get to finish the thought. But this also happens to everybody. It's just in ADHD, it's a lot worse. Now, these are really human functions. They're brain functions. And without these executive functions, deep work wouldn't actually be possible. So when it comes to the challenges that we have with deep work, interestingly, there are many problems that are focused, to be honest, in the knowledge sector, so our sector. Technology has actually produced a lot of major improvements in manufacturing and other industries, but its employees are generally left basically to their own for organizing, employees are left to their own for organizing their work when there are problems, whereas its office workers, again, us, knowledge workers, where struggles are more felt. So the thing is, what are the things that halt your focus? Well, we've got pings, we've got alerts, we've got visual pop-ups, and the thing you also have to think about is, how do you feel when you see the red dot of notification, something that's there to say, hey, over here, hey, come over here, I've got something for you. Is it a vibration? Is it a ping? Is it the dot? Is it the visual indicator? What is this thing that actually takes you away from your attention? And one of the things that's fascinating, even from a deep work perspective, and Megan's going, Loryan, stick to the script, is when you're in a meeting with someone who has never turned their notifications off, and you see, you hear a ding, or they're like, an email pops up while they're mid-sentence to you, and you almost see like one eyeball kind of like trying to move off to the left, and they'll go, and the thing that I was saying. So think about that in a conversation, but multiplied across the day.
I actually only just occurred to me that I felt like we could relabel it the red dot of anxiety.
Yeah.
Maybe.
The red dot of FOMO.
Or the 3 dots when someone's typing and you think incoming message, and then it never comes. It's like the cursor was just there. Yeah. So these all happen to us in some form. Let's talk about some of the research. So a study at the California State University looked at how long students could pay attention on a single task, and the average length of time was 3 minutes. The culprit, technology. Every time there was a bing, a beep, a flash, people were no longer 100% focused on what they were doing. Now, if there are people on the call thinking, yeah, that's the younger generation, they're hopeless. Maybe not so just them. Michigan State University found that even short interruptions, so even silencing your phone if it starts to ring, shifting to press the button or ignore something, can actually have a big impact on your ability to complete a task accurately. Interruptions of 3 seconds doubled the error rate in the task people were doing. Researchers at the University of California examined the cost of interrupted work on productivity and stress, and they found that interruptions increase stress, decrease productivity. And you've probably heard in their research, they reported that it takes on average 25 minutes to get your focus back after an interruption. I've heard this range from 23 minutes to 25, depending on your source. But essentially, you need that time then to regain your focus and go back into a task. So these studies, and I'm sure many more, highlight the importance of managing interruptions to improve our productivity, to reduce our stress, and for us to actually just do better work. One study actually found that switching between answering texts and emails while trying to focus on a task reduced your mental function by an average of 10 points on an IQ test.
So that means I've got an IQ of 0 by this stage.
So while we think we're fine, and I'm sure, I'm going to just go out there and say a lot of people are like, I'm okay. I'm not on Facebook. We think we're fine. It tends to happen most of the day. So in general, multitasking has been shown to reduce productivity, and actually by up to 40%. I don't know about you. I think I would say I multitask all day. It's rare that I would have a 2-hour block or even a 4-hour block. So it's all over, really. Yeah. Humans need food. Okay, we need sleep. We need love. This is not new knowledge, and this is not, as I said, not breaking ground. This has been around for a long time, the hierarchy of needs. We also need to take breaks, and we also need to move. And our attention span needs variety. We can't always control how we're feeling and our thoughts and our motivations. No one is a robot, except robots. AI, Copilot, ChatGPT. In order to be productive, though, we actually need to give our brain a task, have that task, focus in it, rest.
Actually,
we need space to think.
Do you mind if I go to gym tomorrow morning? You okay with that?
No. Stop interrupting me.
Sorry.
No. When we're interrupted, see, I think I did just speed up a little. When we're interrupted, we work faster, which might sound good, but it comes at a price. People have a higher workload, more stress, higher frustration, more time pressure and effort. These interruptions change our mental state, and it impacts quality, productivity, and stress levels. And in fact, research by a guy called Tanner in the US into the modern workplace reported that 82% of employees are burnt out, which is also a whole other new workforce crisis.
Now, this is this woman here, Dr. Sophie Leroy at the University of Washington, coined a term called attention residue. And so quoting here, she says, attention residue easily occurs when we leave tasks unfinished, when we get interrupted, or when we anticipate that once we have a chance to set the unfinished task or get to the unfinished task or pending work, we will have to rush to get it done. Our brain finds it hard to let go of these tasks and instead keeps them active in the back of our mind, even when we are trying to focus on and perform other tasks. So I look forward to everybody taking leave at some point going, oh, sorry, attention residue. Now, the thing is that neuropsychologists have actually reported that when you shift from one activity to another, you actually burn up oxygenated glucose. Well, I'm sounding very, I need glasses, one of my glasses to sound very scientific. Now, this oxygenated glucose is the fuel that your brain uses to keep your focus on a task. Now, that continual switching depletes this fuel. This is why when you're multitasking and you've got interruptions, you effectively end up feeling exhausted and stressed after having this than if you had a productive day of focused quality work.
And it's interesting because I feel like over the last couple of years and through the pandemic, we talked about cognitive load and all the meeting fatigue. And there you go, for 2024, we'll talk about oxygenated glucose.
Yeah.
But no, attention residue and this whole switching is another way that we're all getting quite exhausted. And finally, money. Let's say you've got a deadline. Maybe it's a report, a technical solution, maybe you're building a website, a flow, an issue you're solving, whatever it is. If you blocked out half a day, so let's say 4 hours to work on that one thing, and you got just 3 interruptions, you'd lose an hour, according to all the research. And if you got more interruptions than that, you're already slashing your focus time in half. So what about interrupting others? Because it's not all about me.
What's for dinner tomorrow?
Do you have a minute? Do you have a sec? That quick moment, your 1 minute request actually translates to 30 minutes lost in productivity, because by the time you ask it and they answer and take 23 minutes to get back into their deep focus.
Sorry, I'm distracting. What were you working on?
One study found that on average, employees are interrupted every 3 minutes and 5 seconds. That's pretty terrifying.
Unless you're all doing presentations online, in which case you don't get distracted, except by me.
The same study also found that half of the interruptions we experience are self-interruptions because we check our smartphones on average 150 times a day. The average professional checks their email every 37 minutes. Get off your phone.
Oh, sorry. Distracted.
And there was an analysis of a productivity app called Rescue Time, and the users of it revealed that the average knowledge worker checks email and other incoming messages every 6 minutes. So
that must be popular.
You can be, thinking you're amazing, but let's all admit that we are addicted to this technology. Did you actually know, though, that the average office worker has been reported to be productive 31% of their workday? Okay, that's 2 hours and 53 minutes or 12.5 hours a week. So now you hopefully are starting to see why we feel that we're in deep
Kaka?
Stuff.
No expletives used.
So with all this in mind, maybe take a moment to reflect. Some of this might be new information. Maybe you're all going to have a good long hard look at some things. But we thought we'd ask ourselves here this question: does Microsoft 365 contribute to the problem? And to be honest, the answer was really easy. All technology does. Apps and services all compete for our attention, and they're designed to hook us in as much as possible. So even putting MS365 aside, we receive dozens of notifications on our phones, and we generally don't notice them as much as they're not necessarily in your face and easily dismissible, but there's lots of stuff out there.
Now, there was, jokes in the keynote chat about the good old days and us recalling how old we are. So let's take your mind back, and for those of you who actually can take their mind back this far, think back to a time before Microsoft Teams, which actually is quite a while ago, before Skype for Business, or Link, or Office Communication Server, or Live Communication Server, or even Exchange Server 2000 Instant Messaging Service, or even MSN Messenger or ICQ at its popular phase. And yes, I'm showing my age here. So think back to Office 97. Think of how much people hated Clippy back then. And Clippy was one notification, one pop-up, one thing that was coming up to you and saying, hi, can I help you write a letter? So that was just one thing, and we hated it that much. Yes, Megan, that light is going to flick because we are now in home automation time zone.
Focus. You got distracted.
Yes, because my light has changed. Now, fast forward to, say, 5 years ago, and before this whole hybrid work hype thing that we're living in right now. It'll never catch on. But think back to when basically it was pretty common for workers to go to an office, and working from home wasn't even something that many considered, both as employees and employers. Was it peaceful in those offices? Did everyone just sit there quietly doing their work uninterrupted?
She looks peaceful.
I don't know. I almost think she's
Angry?
Angry?
I'm not sure.
Like, I reckon the guy with the man bun just interrupted her. She's like trying to get back to her focus. It's been 20 minutes. No, we still have people coming up to us all the time, interrupting our workflow. Pretty much unless you had an office with a closed door and blinds drawn and a sign outside of it that said, do not interrupt, you were interruptible. But one of the things that even 5 years ago was something that was cool that was adding to this was the open plan design in offices. So it was all about, increasing collaboration, but the problem is that it removed the noise barriers. It removed the things that stopped us from hearing and seeing other things that were going on that adds to those distractions. What it effectively made it easy. That was not rehearsed, by the way. What it made it easier for people is to see who's around and who you could interrupt because you had a question. So it's kind of like Teams chat before Teams chat. The other thing you could also do is between screens, you can actually just turn to a person and go, oh my God, did you just see the email?
Hey, did you see the footy on the weekend?
What? No, can you see the link? And so the whole thing would then get distracted, and then other people would, pick in, and then you'd have the whole prairie dogging like, hey, are you talking about this?
Did you go to Taylor Swift?
And so that's the challenge, is that we had these self-inflicted disruptions. So is it any better or worse today with the technology?
Oh, I don't know. What do you think?
No. Case in point, this home office setup, we've got my desk here and Megan's desk there. Megan's desk has actually been changed just the other day. We've been in this house, 3.5 years? Not to handle distractions better, because sometimes our kids will come and get a device from behind us, as that's the charging station. You've just simply accepted that there will be interruptions, and simply made it that they won't appear on the camera, but you've just gone, I accept the interruption.
I've worked around it, but I guess one of the key differences is when I'm working from home is people can't see me, so they don't know if I'm just ignoring the message. I could say, oh, sorry, I was in the bathroom, or I just was getting some water and I'm actually just sitting there. So there are pros and cons of each, I guess. Yeah.
So let's have a look at diving into Microsoft 365 and Teams. How does this actually work? So there are a lot of different places in Microsoft 365 to control your notifications, which can be a bit overwhelming. But if you spend the time, it can actually make a huge, huge difference to your day. So firstly, let's start with Windows. Technically not part of Microsoft 365, but it is if you count licensing. We'll not get into that. So with Windows, we've got a lot of different choices around what we can control and what can capture your attention, not just around the system itself, but also for the apps installed. Now let's go to everyone's favorite, Outlook, or You've Got Mail. Now, fun fact, this is actually my Outlook, and this is how it's actually been set since 2008. That is right, I have 0 notifications for email in Outlook because I just don't care. I care about the email, I don't care to be notified, and for me it's more, I'll look at it on my terms. Now, this is a logical place to go. I would go to the mail setting to be able to tweak my mail notifications, but if I want to do calendar notifications, those are buried in advanced, not in calendar, advanced. So this is great for end users to try and figure this stuff out. If you, for example, use To-Do to manage your tasks and you've got it installed, firstly, kudos to you. Awesome app and good for you for doing that. And we've got notifications in To-Do around reminders for tasks. The thing is, though, that To-Do tasks are effectively Outlook tasks. So you've got To-Do notification settings and also Outlook notification settings. And anybody who's a regular user will quite often have notifications from both Outlook and To-Do popping up. So you've got to tweak that. In from a web perspective, or some of the web services within 365, in the world of OneDrive, we've got a lot of notification choices, which is fantastic. And even in things like Power BI, we have the ability to modify, whether we get email notifications and whether we get Teams notifications. So it's great to see these services doing it. Then we've got things like Loop. Now, I'm going to bring a little bit of a quiz into it, which we had to change a bit here, but what we're going to do is, if you've used Loop and you've joined a workspace and someone modifies it, let's say you want to not receive notifications for some reason. What do you do? So grab your phones out and please don't check the messages on them. Just put it in phone camera mode and go to this form, and we'll give you a few minutes, and Megan's going to do some tick tock. No, she's not. To get your phone out and select the answer for where you would actually go. No, that's not supposed to be there. I had to change things at the last minute, so now I have to go find my quiz. Scan the QR code. I guess you can't click the link because I'm sharing my screen. Apologies. And tell me your notifications. We've got one response in so far. I want to see them come in, especially given there is 73 people. We'll see how many people are paying attention to this session right now. 2, we've got some good answers. We'll keep it going for another probably 30 seconds. I don't know, Meg, let's have some small talk. Any small talk you can think of? How's the weather today?
Hot.
Hot. What's the answer here that people are coming with? Loop on the web seems to be the leading one. Sorry, actually.
You can join it.
No, I'm not going to drag it down there because it shows the answer.
Right.
But we've got a bunch of responses. They're still coming in, and I know it's very exciting for you right now to just be hearing me talking about this. But what's really fascinating with this is that most people are doing what I suspected and selecting Loop on the web, because that seems like the most obvious choice. Unfortunately, it's not. So yeah, what you said, the options we had were Loop on the web. Second place was Microsoft Teams, Outlook. And I do appreciate the people who chose the answer of saying you can't turn it off, you're doomed, which technically is true. But the answer is OneDrive. OneDrive is where you turn off your Loop email notifications. It kind of makes sense because this is where Loop files actually live, but it's not exactly the kind of thing that an end user would think of is, let me go to OneDrive and notification settings to tweak Loop notifications. Now, let's dive into Teams, as this is a Teams-based conference, or as a Copilot conference. I can't keep track these days. What's the hot thing? It was Viva at one point. Now, we've looked at Outlook and some other apps. Let's look at one of the big reasons why we're here, which is Teams, the meta operating system, the solution to all our woes. Or is that Copilot again? I can't keep track. Now, as you can see, there are a lot of options in Teams to tweak your notifications to help with messages and all the places you've got to go to keep track of things. And that's just the core functionality. Now, because we can actually add in apps into Teams, those themselves can actually bring in some notification settings as well. And we can turn those on or off for individual apps, and also go into specific notification types within those particular apps for what you want to see. So we're going to jump into another quiz. Again, grab your phones, ignore any notifications you've got unless they say Loryan's cool, in which case like, and go to the next quiz, and we're going to see effectively which app in Teams has the most notification options. The answer will surprise you. So yeah, let's see some responses. And this will take a little bit longer because you got to drag in different orders. So what's tomorrow? Thursday? What have we got on? Yeah.
This one requires thinking.
This one
requires some.
Here we go. Oh, we've got some stuff here. Yep, some answers coming in, some responses. Ooh. There's a correct one in there. Impressive. Let's say just talk amongst yourselves, but there's no audio. Oh, another correct answer. Oh, I'm happy with this.
Is the correct answer on the screen there?
Well, they can't see it, but they'll be told.
if you drag that down. There isn't a tick, you could bring it down.
Oh, okay.
Be more engaging. Like,
Oh, I could do that. Yes, let's do that. Let's show on the screen live. At least this one won't break like the conference years ago that broke our browser. So this is what, oh, no one selected Viva Insights at all. Okay, interesting. Interesting. So the correct and incorrect is just simply showing their position. Anyway, I'm not going to dilly-dally on this, but great options there that people have selected. Now, so what you said is we've got Viva Pulse. Actually, it's a little bit hard. This isn't, unfortunately, the survey format hasn't turned out the way I wanted, but most of you are wrong. Let's put it that way. So the correct answer is Planner in the lead with 29 notification settings in Teams, followed by Viva Engage with 19, Viva Approvals with 17, Viva Approvals with 17, Viva Insights with 14, Power BI with 8, Viva Pulse with 7, and Speaker Coach with 2. Now, a lot of you probably aren't licensed for those, so understandable that you may not necessarily know the options, but that is 96 options amongst those apps to choose from. So that's a lot of notification settings. And if you think about that's, adding the Teams core functionality, the Outlook settings that I showed before, Power BI, OneDrive, we are at just under 150 individual notification settings for people to set, not including Windows and other apps and other things installed on their computer and their phone and all those kind of things. So we are drowning in choice. This is a good thing that we have the choice, but is also a challenge because people need to remember it.
So how are we feeling? That was a lot of information. And at this point, we wanted to, I guess, raise the question together was, can we solve the distraction crisis? We've talked about the research, and there's a lot of challenges we're having in the working world and our personal lives with distraction and everything. And it's not a quick question, but let's share some thoughts. So firstly, it's a really good time to reflect, not in this moment specifically, but ongoing. Have a think about yourself, your workplace, your colleagues. Are you annoying? I think I am, and I'm working through that. You may want to shift some behaviors or addictions. But in all honesty, it's good to think about what has control over you, perhaps, and how could it be different? Talk to people, and whether that's your team. Hey, Loryan.
No.
When I send you a chat for any time during the day, is there a better way that you'd like me to communicate? Don't answer that because you don't have a choice. But conversations, and then also on a broader scale, awareness, because a lot of people maybe don't see other options. And obviously I need a Cal Newport t-shirt or to be in his fan club. But in all honesty, this book, Digital Minimalism, is actually really interesting, can be confronting, particularly things like try standing in a queue and not look at your phone at all, or, waiting room at the doctor's, all those areas where you have to just wait. It's interesting. We all get our flow impacted by email, beeps, phone calls, someone walking up to your desk, the dog, the Amazon delivery, your boss. Unless you're in a controlled environment or a job where you have one single thing to focus on and no communication with the outside world, oh wait, and then with that you even still have your personal life and your smartphone. So interruptions are a part of life. The key thing is plan for it or structure how you work to ease the impact. Some of the suggestions for individuals are things like leaving anchors or reference points. So when something comes up, you kind of leave yourself a clue. You don't just leave the thing and go over there. You actually quickly do something. And the goal with that is when you return, you're reducing that 23 or 25 minutes, maybe down to 10 or 15. Obviously know what can wait. Working on one thing at a time. We all think we can multitask really well, but maybe we actually don't really see how it could be better.
I think it's also handling, like when someone comes up to interrupt you, not saying they're being rude in the process, is saying, hold on just a sec, and finishing that thing.
Yeah, or that doing the anchor then.
Yeah.
You don't have to go into your email all the time. Think about your job and if it really requires it. Obviously, notifications, website blockers, there's loads of things you can do. You can actually push back on the world and the interruptions. Just have a think about your state, and even just good old willpower. Challenge yourself maybe to get faster into the zone or remove certain things. We've done a few sessions in the past at various conferences or what have you around tips for people to help them, apps, using Microsoft apps to help them with focus and attention and doing work and all sorts of stuff.
We're the best at this.
But one thing we haven't talked as much about, I think, is leaders in a business. Leaders need to get involved. These are company-wide tools. You know, we work at places where others are making decisions and rolling out tools, and they are supposed to support collaboration. So it's also really important, whether you're a leader, whether you're in the IT team, project team, whatever, you know, take it back to your organization. But there needs to be some discussion at the top level, even about what's acceptable. Can I be in D&D for 4 hours or 8 hours? Things like that, and response times, or even asking people maybe to book appointments for, you know, things instead of just chats all over the place. So a lot of this is company culture, and it's time to actually, you know, revisit and think through it.
I distracted her before, so yeah. One of the things you can do using the tools we have at our disposal is use Viva Insights, the thing that people ignore the emails on Monday morning or once a month, or alternatively say, I don't want Microsoft reading my stuff. So they turn it off. Now, one of the things that Viva Insights has is an important statistic: multitasking during meetings. Now, if you send an email or a chat message while you're in a meeting, you are effectively multitasking. But unfortunately, that's only what Viva Insights can see. So you could be doing other things that's multitasking that it can't see. Now, this particular screenshot, again, is showing from my account over the past weeks that I didn't multitask in 75% of the meetings I was in. I'm impressed by that, Megan. Can I have a trophy, a pat on the back? No?
I do have, yeah, I've got a world's greatest mother. I'll scratch it off and put world's most focused dude.
So on that note, actually, one of the things you're not seeing is that right now I'm using a fidget spinner, which is a very cool Skype and Teams one. But what I do, and as you can also see, we're standing. Now, I'm a bit of a nerd, in case you hadn't noticed, and I have home automation set up. So when I join a Teams call, my desk automatically goes into standing mode, and I use that as the sign to then go, cool, step back from the desk, pick up fidget spinner because my hands need to be busy, and I just focus on that. Otherwise, if we're sitting too close to the mouse and keyboard, we'll get distracted by things, and often we're the ones who are actually driving that distraction. Now, something also to consider is a collaboration contract. It's not actually a legal binding document. It's more of an understanding about how people will work together. Now, while generally a collaboration contract is thought more for teamwork, it can also be applied to just colleagues and co-workers, kind of something that Megan was referring to before. For example, don't just go offline to focus and have deep work. I mean, cool, do that, but tell people you're going to do that, because otherwise they'll find other ways to contact you. Or set your status message or automatic replies to inform people, hey, I'm focusing. Because we do have focus time, can come up in Viva Insights, but it needs to be more than that. And a lot of people tend to ignore focus time, both the people who have it booked in for them, as well as people booking over the top or sending messages. So yeah, give people context that, hey, I need to focus on this. Otherwise, they'll just think you're off at the pub. Now, it's important to do little things like this to communicate with your peers, to help set expectations, or, hey, I'm having a challenging day. Can I just focus, please? Because, you know, if you do little things like this, then effectively we'll all understand each other. It'll all be wonderful. And in no time, we'll be holding hands, singing Kumbaya around the fireplace in our business suits.
Some of the other things that came to mind for us just briefly were thinking about, you know, quick wins or shorter long-term things you could look at in your organization. So obviously with the quick wins, like, yeah, sure, manage your notifications, go into it, look at it all and think about alerts or yourself and your own behavior. There's more of the medium term with maybe spending time as a team and revisiting how we work. And then the longer term, maybe for an organisation, whether it be looking at the insights, understanding research and thinking more about your people. And in a lot of those categories, maybe even survey. So whatever you think will work in your organisation to understand your people and help maybe drive change.
Now, a lot of these things with distractions is it's not just about in the workday, it's also outside of the workday in our personal lives as well. So France has the right to disconnect, as other European countries are starting to do as well. Down here, down under in Australia, we have the right to disconnect. So that kangaroo that keeps calling me after hours trying to get me to do work, no, told you, Bruce. So yeah, as of December 2023, we have the right to refuse calls and messages from our employer. And that's the thing, is we need to not be checking our emails and our Teams messages while we're spending time with the family, because those distractions go both ways.
So that is our thoughts and our session. Thank you everyone for coming, and thanks for joining and listening to what we wanted to explore in Teams Nation this year and this time. Feel free to do the QR code and rate us, and obviously I don't know if they can separate if I'm better than you. I think it's just one score, so we'll cope with that.